If you have any questions you'd like to ask beforehand, that would be great.
We are now live.
In regards to generational wealth. Okay.
Hello. We are live. We're doing something a bit different today. Sonia, do you want to share?
Yes. So today we're going to be speaking about creating I need to adjust the camera. Sorry.
The wonders of being live.
Okay. It didn't really work, but it's fine. So today we're going to be discussing creating generational wealth in your 20s and 30s. If you're a young person and you're looking to build a legacy and start creating legacy for your future children or your children or your loved ones, that's what we're going to be covering today. So
we're doing something special today. We've got more family on. So we're live. Normally we're live just on LinkedIn and then Facebook and YouTube. We're now live as well on TikTok. So we have another camera. So you're going to see us kind of face our other TikTok camera.
The TikTok crowd.
As well as face you. So work with us. Sonia, they can't see you on the TikTok.
It's fine. It's fine. I can pop my face in and out. So to begin with, do you want to cover quickly what generational wealth is for people that are new here today?
Okay, so generational wealth, in my opinion, is not how much wealth you amass or build in your lifetime, even though it has something to do with it. It's how and the way you transfer that wealth in a very efficient and protected and directed way to the next generation and for future generations, which people don't tend to think about. They just think about accumulating all the wealth, amassing it, whether it's pensions, investments, etc. And then they don't think about the exit plan of, how do I pass it on? Because most people just think it's just a standard basic will, whatever it might be, transfer it and there's no problems at all, without thinking of all the perils that could potentially happen, all the threats to that wealth. So what we say is it's not how much money you make, it's actually how much money you keep that dictates generational wealth. And also, if I get a bit deeper, training up a custodian to wealth in a family whose responsibility is to make sure the family wealth is transferred from generation to generation.
Thank you. Yeah. So somebody who's, let's say, in their 20s or 30s, at that age, you're really starting to get your life together. You're getting your big job, especially becoming a professional, probably getting married, probably starting to have kids in your 20s and 30s. And obviously, during that time, your estate is also growing.
Yes.
And I think it's really important to start looking into creating generational wealth, especially if you have that responsibility of taking care of your family and you're the main provider for your house, your home. It's really important to look into creating generational wealth. So if the day comes where you're no longer there, your family is taken care of. And a lot of people, they tend to assume that if you're creating generational wealth, you're in your 40s or your 50s, 60s, and that's the time to start looking into estate planning. When really and truly, there's no perfect time to do that. The time is now. And I think the first step really, especially if you're a young person looking to create generational wealth, is to encourage your parents to start their planning if they haven't done so already.
Yeah.
That's just because if they pass, you are able to inherit their assets, their home, what they have to basically pass on to you. You're able to inherit that. So it doesn't even have to start from you. It can start from your parents being passed down to you.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can continue that generational wealth into your children and grandchildren. And you're able to manage it from your parents, stemming from your parents, which would be a fantastic thing to see and witness. Would you like to expand on that?
No, I fully agree. And I think maybe the best way to be an example to your parents, rather than them talking to them, is a saying, I'm going to embarrass myself now. In fact, I won't say it, I will embarrass myself. But ultimately, if you show someone that you've done something, that's probably the best way to teach. And saying to the parents, well, look, I've done my will, I've done my LPA, what have you done? I think would be a good way of prompting them to listen to you, rather than saying, have you done your will yet? And then probably getting their back up thinking, well, you're just trying to get my money. But I'm not saying not all parents are like that, but in certain cultures, it's very much like, are you trying to kill me off? And we're trying to do away with that type of mentality and really focus on how that money is transferred ultimately. So yeah, it's really, really important.
Thank you. So as you already mentioned, the first thing is to start with yourself.
Yeah.
Show that example, get your will in place, start your estate planning, protect your assets, start the trust to protect those assets. I think that that's the first point to start with. And then from there, you're able to set an example. And I say another major thing as well is if you have children, the best thing you can do is educate yourself financially and then pass on those traits and those habits that you have learned to your children. Because the worst thing you'd want to do is create generational wealth and so work so hard to build your wealth, and then you have children who will, as you say, squander it. Yeah. They won't take care of the property, the house that you pass on to them, or the large sum of cash. They might be careless with it. So an important thing is usually in your 20s and 30s, that's when people start having children, to educate them how to be financially responsible, especially in their early years, so they can have those habits so that they can take into their adult life. Also,
can I give a shout out? Do you think it's
a shout out?
Prudent to give a shout out. Well, we talk about children's education.
Yeah.
We're talking about 20s and 30s. And I know there's been a lot of books being published for parents and parents with children to promote generational wealth. Would you think we should give a bit of a shout out?
If you feel comfortable to do that, that's
fine.
Look,
you know what? I think sharing is caring. And this is top of my mind. So if I've forgotten anyone, it's not personal. So I know Bola Soul has released the book Kia Comodoro. If I've said your name wrong, Pennies to Pounds, has released a children's book. I know Emmanuel, the E-Man has released a new children's book on finance. That's what springs to mind initially. Another young lady, her name slips on mine, Black Girl Finance, really good book. Really good books to educate yourself if financial education is not primary in your household. And you're in your 20s and 30s, doesn't matter if you're male or female. So, I'm happy to share that. I think it's really important to build that accolade, build that knowledge and make people realize, look, go get educated. But whilst you're getting educated on how to build that wealth, also educate yourself on how to protect it. Okay. And financial protection, I mean, there's loads of financial advisors out there. So yeah, I'm not even gonna go started. So I'll name those, and maybe I'll put some names in the link. But ultimately, especially if you're a young professional, whatever that might be, everyone's got their own story, their own background. So you're earning money, which is fantastic. You graduated, you're making, your 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even hundreds in your young years. But it's not about just sticking it in the bank or just investing in that. What's the exit plan? So, which is where we come in, and so strategizing how you want that to be protected. And if you don't know, get educated, and how that you want it to be directed, and how efficient that is. So you want ultimately 100% of that wealth to go to your loved ones, not 60% or even less now with the new pension reforms. So you've got to understand how the game works, right? So then the rules of that game, so you can play that game much, much better. So yeah, that was just to do that. I think it's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, to have those resources as well is great. It's a great place to start. So I think that was also very useful. So just to go into, just to touch a bit on the inheritance tax side of it. This is just, no matter what age you are, inheritance tax is something that needs to be managed if you want to create generational wealth.
Definitely.
Would you like to touch up on that one a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing about inheritance tax, ultimately, it's a tax to be concerned about when we pass. Now, that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. Okay, two things: taxes and death. Right. So, with 20s and 30s, what we're talking about that for, because it's going to happen. And the earlier you start to plan, number one, the less stressed you're going to be, and the more focused you're going to be, because things just happen. Things happen. Sometimes things happen to blindside us, especially if you're in an entrepreneurial position and starting 2 or 3 businesses and you might go bankrupt or creditors are after you or whatever. It can happen in your 20s and 30s, right? So how do you ring fence that wealth? How do you protect it? Because you are working hard, not just for yourself. I'm sure that everyone has a story, a passion, a motivator, a why, to to do better than what they had experienced in their childhood growing up. Maybe not. Maybe it's just that you just want to amass a lot of wealth. Great, but you still need to know what the rules are, even though it may not apply to you now. That the more you earn, the more it will apply to you. So the threshold for inheritance tax, just if you're not aware, is only £325,000. So if you are in your 20s and 30s and you already own a house, especially down south, you're already over that bracket. I don't care how high your mortgage is. If you've got life insurance, you're definitely going to be over that bracket, because I can pretty much guarantee it's not in trust. Or if I was a gambling man, I'd say more than likely it wouldn't be in trust. If you're a professional earning, then you're going to have death in service policies. I've seen up to 20 times your income. If you're a high earner, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100K, 150K a year, and you're getting 5, 6, 7, 10 times your earnings, you're going to be over your threshold for inheritance tax purposes. So you've got to start thinking. It's not just about putting money away for investments, using pensions as an efficient way of reducing your income tax and all that stuff, which is very wise to do. But ultimately, your financial advisor is there to build your wealth. So ultimately, your investments are only going to get bigger. Inflation is not going to reduce. Okay, the more the banks print money, the more inflation is going to increase. That's just the bottom line. And if you're investing wisely in using capital gains to build your wealth, then that's another tax that you've got to be aware of. Capital gains tax, if you're using crypto, all that kind of stuff. Whatever is your bag, you got to be very mindful of how do you transfer that wealth efficiently. It's not just about, well, how do I reduce my income tax, which is what most people have on their mind, because that's probably the most visceral and most immediate pain. But capital gains tax will hit you when you want to sell. Stamp duty will hit you if you want to sell your house and you've got a mortgage on it, or you want to transfer shares into a company or something like that. And then inheritance tax will hit you if you're using trusts or a death event takes place. Maybe if you're inheriting and you realize, my days, my parents or loved ones didn't plan, and now I'm getting 40% less than I would have done had it been done properly. So it still does affect you, even albeit indirectly. All right. And the other one, which is really important, is say you have a vulnerability or disability, and you're on some kind of a benefit which is means tested, and you're due to receive a large inheritance, and that's not been done strategically via a trust. You can't reverse it into a trust later on. It will stop your benefits and income. So that's equally as important. All right. So yeah, from an inheritance tax perspective, you've got to be considering that. If you own a house, got investments, have life insurance, you got to be thinking about inheritance tax.
Thank you so much. And you did touch up a bit on the life insurance side of it. So would you say someone who's in their 20s, 30s, looking to create generational wealth, do you think a good step is to also get that life insurance in place?
My opinion is that life insurance is probably one of the best wealth creating vehicles you could, one of the easiest and one of the best cost-effective ways of building wealth for your loved ones. Okay, the younger you start, i.e., 20s and 30s, great. I think some advisors now are starting to switch on to the concept of whole of life assurance. Most people just sell term assurance, which is if you don't know what that means, it will stop at a certain age. And when you're in your 20s and 30s, age 75 seems like a million years away. But ultimately, you'll get there and it'll be too old, or it'll be super expensive to renew. Whereas if you can get whole of life assurance for as much as you possibly can at the young age and afford it and maintain it. I was listening to a book the other day, like if you're on 50K a year and you didn't spend the money, had no expenditure, it will still take you 40 years to save, I think, $2 million or something like that.
Wow.
Right. So how long do you think it'll take you to save £1 million or £500,000? Are you guaranteed to have investments to amass that form of wealth? But you can guarantee, as long as you maintain the monthly payments, that kind of payout from a young age, assuming you can afford it, or make the sacrifice to afford it, that it will pay out, especially if you have children in your young age. age. There's young adults, young parents, professionals working hard, running businesses, raising the family in their 20s, in their 30s. And I don't think they're being told about whole of life insurance. I'm not going to go down the commission route and that kind of stuff. I'm just saying, it's something very important to be considering.
So just to go back to basics, for someone who's hearing about this for the first time, what exactly is life insurance?
It's insurance on your life.
So you're paying monthly payments, and then when you pass, how does that life insurance work?
If it's for a death event, because there's other types of insurance, and we're not regulated to give advice, so it's just a generic overview that it's insurance that will pay out a lump sum in the event that a death takes place, and it's not a death that's deemed suspicious like suicide and stuff like that. It's just a genuine death event taking place. So you have that could be for a specific term, it's like 20 years, 25 years, 50 years, or you can have it for the whole of your life. And it will pay out on death, guaranteed, whenever that might be. Now, in your 20s and 30s, there's probably other types of insurance, which is probably equally or more important. Speak to your protection advisor, financial advisor about that. But whole of life insurance, do a bit of research on it, and then speak to your advisor further and challenge them. Challenge your advisors. That's why you're listening to this, to educate yourself, to go and challenge them. They're getting paid to do a job. Challenge your advisors, ask questions so they can come back to you with an educated and accurate answer.
Thank you so much. And you also touched on earlier about digital assets and the importance of that if you want to create generational wealth.
Yeah.
So how would that correlate into creating generational wealth, your digital assets?
Well, digital assets is any electronic I don't say item, but any electronic presence that you have in your hard drive, I forgot the specific word, on your phone, that's valuable to you. Now, that could be something that's investment based, like NFTs and crypto, which is extremely important, all the way to your Instagram photos and Facebook photos and just the iPhone or Android photographs. That's on your phone, that's on your personal account, which is a very secure account. Most of the servers are abroad, and and you probably realize that you can't log in, a third party will not be able to log in unless they've got your details. So just even assigning the third party rights to log in, because you can't, it'd be very expensive and difficult to take an American company to court in the UK, especially with their very tight laws. So something as simple as that, if you consider your pictures and assets are digital and they're valuable, so that's generational to pass down
The legacy.
All the way to your digital currency, crypto, etc., which is all it's electronic footprint at the end of the day. And you need secure keys to access that. But they are valuable. They are to some degree tangible in some certain aspects. And you can pass it on to loved ones, but it can equally be lost very easily without the right protocols and security. So if you've got a cold wallet, etc., then how do you pass that on? Hard drives with digital information on there needs to be protected. Who would access that? If you run a business with, again, very important encrypted information, how do you transfer that? And even we talk about digital assets, but whilst I'm on the topic, mental capacity, if that's lost, so you don't have the mouthpiece of your own to state something, you've assigned someone else the mouthpiece and authority to say it on your behalf and know where to access certain things for those people who you love and trust, and you know that they will honor your wishes implicitly. So very important things to consider, especially in your 20s and 30s, because that's really the generation, the age group that are utilizing this technology even more so than most.
Thank you so much. And I'd also like to touch a bit on investing as a young person, the importance of doing that now to create generational wealth. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's different ways to invest. And I'm speaking very generically. You need to have a professional. I mean, the wealthy, or anyone of any modicum of wisdom. We don't know it all. So you speak to someone who does know something. I think the best book I could say to read is The Richest Man in Babylon, that really emphasizes that point. Like, if you want to know about investments and stocks and shares, speak to a stockbroker, speak to a financial advisor. If you want to know about gold, speak to a gold specialist. If you want to know about estate planning and inheritance tax, speak to a tax advisor, estate planner who understands that. Have your team. Don't just have one general practitioner who may know a little bit about something, and I can't really give you the best advice, or try and do it all by yourself on the internet, which is one way to start, but there's a lot of noise on the internet, and if you don't know what you don't know, you end up shooting yourself in the foot. In the story in The Richest Man of Babylon, he gives 7 kind of tenets, or what's the classification of advice, step 1, step 2. And one of the steps was just that: make sure you speak to the right person. Don't speak to a diamond seller to buy gold. Get advice on oil. All right, you speak to an oil specialist or commodity specialist on advice on oil, and you speak to a diamond specialist for advice on diamond and precious gems, etc. So it's important that you speak to the right specialist. Investments, again, statistics would probably state that investing in other businesses on the stock market would probably be a very safe way. Again, that's not advisory. Go speak to an advisor. Running your own business, buying businesses, etc., etc., etc. It's probably a very secure way of building wealth as an investment. If you're not going to do it yourself, you've got someone else managing it for you. So speak to a financial advisor, regulated, independent, that can give you that type of advice going forward. Especially if you've got high disposable income, have a plan. Yeah, keeping it in the bank, which is only insured for £85,000. Do the maths. There's only so many bank accounts you can have. So how and then the interest is only limited, and I'm sure the banks are doing exactly what I'm saying. They are investing in hedge funds and everything else, the token money that you have in your account. So why don't you just learn the rules and play the game just as well? Okay. So yeah, that's my opinion. Take it or leave it.
Thank you so much. And I say my last point to touch on is young parents. Even a lot of people assume that I'm young, I don't have a ton of wealth. I don't have a ton of money. I don't own a lot of things. What's the point of really starting? If you have a young child, or any child of any age, you have to start. I think it's really important, especially to have a will in place. And it's not only to create generational wealth, but also like guardianship. And I don't want to kind of go off course.
No, it's relevant.
Yeah,
it's definitely relevant.
But even if you're a young mother, a young father, it's really important to start your estate planning for your child, for the best interest of your child. It should be your priority to want to continue your legacy, no matter how old or young you are. Would you like to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, I think with guardianship, it's just horrible for the child if their parent. I mean, it's hard enough that their parents have passed away, but if they're being given or handed to a family member who you hate, or don't advocate raising your child with parental rights, but the local authority, local government have basically said, "Oh, here you go," rather than going to care with us, go to Uncle so and so or Sister so and so, and in your gut, you know that they're not going to raise your child as well as you, with the values that you have, etc. Then you owe it to yourself, if that's for the only reason, to get a will and have a guardianship clause. It must be in writing. If it's not in writing of who you want to have parental rights over your child, when a death event takes place, then that right is then taken away from you and is assumed or presumed for you. And I think 100% of parents that I speak to will say that's not going to happen on my watch once they understand, especially if there's difficulties in their parental relationship. You want to have absolute clarity as to who should be raising your child.
Yes.
And so that's super important. Again, if you've had children with different partners in the past, very important, super important to clarify who do you want raising your children. Whether you're married, not married, that doesn't really matter. Stating who you want to raise your child with parental rights. And it goes hand in hand with speaking to an advisor to make sure that their lifestyle can be funded if you are not able to be here or be around for that to happen. You don't want a Cinderella scenario for your child. And maybe people don't understand what I'm talking about, but speak to your parents, especially if they've been raised in a different country and their parents have come over here and they've come over here late and they're treated like, well, a lot of political correctness now, isn't it? So I've got to be careful what I say in the public realm. But you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. You don't, then no dramas. But it's not good. So I'm talking about being polite and being kind. Sometimes I kind of say screw PC, but let me just be careful for today. But ultimately, where was I? I lost my train of thought.
Do you know what? It's fine. I think you've actually gotten to the point.
Yeah.
So
also, I mean, to wind up, you got to protect yourself, and for your children that are still learning, you got to protect them. So do the right thing.
Thank you so much. Just to summarize what we've discussed, we've gone through, if you're a young person in your 20s and 30s, a great place to start is to encourage your parents to start their estate planning. Through that, you can start generational wealth from them, and then once they pass, they can continue it to you, and then you can continue it to your children and grandchildren. So then you are basically initiating the creation of generational wealth, and you can start it from your parents instead of starting it from yourself. But also, it's important for you to show that example and start with your own estate planning, get your will in place, get the trust that you need. I think that's really, really important to protect your assets and what you have currently. We also covered the potential hit from inheritance tax and how that could affect creating generational wealth and how to potentially manage that. We have spoken about investing. The earlier, the better. For that wealth to grow 3 years. We have also spoken about having life insurance, which is one of the best, most suitable vehicles to help you create generational wealth. Also, we've covered about investing in your child's education in relation to their financial literacy and just being financially responsible and implementing those habits from a young age so they can take that into their adulthood, because you don't want to create generational wealth and then it's squandered by your children if they don't have that education or that knowledge to be financially responsible. We've also covered about digital assets, the importance of that to continue your legacy. A lot of things nowadays are online, digital technology, and a lot of us have valuable assets that is it intangible or which tangible is it? Intangible. Thank you so much for the correction. And also we have covered the importance of, if you're a young parent, to also have a will in place. That would be a great step to create generational wealth. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
There's only one thing, you might already be from an affluent background and you're probably thinking, well, this is way over my head, or something to do with me and my parents, or got it sorted out. Or not, doesn't matter. But one of the things that I'm passionate about, we're passionate about, is helping families to create custodians to wealth. So raising up your children or a child that maybe will take up that mantle, that baton to be responsible, to learn the family wealth and dynamics of the family wealth, or be passionate enough to say, right, let's go forward to make sure it's passed down to the next generation, and then raising up another child in the next generation to ensure the wealth is passed forward. So when you look at people like the Duke of Westminster, that's what's been done for centuries. And that's just legacy. That is legacy. All right. Traditionally, wealth will last for 3 generations. So the first generation will create it, the second generation will enjoy its spoils, the third generation will go back to scratch and have nothing, and then we've got to start all over again. And we say our children are entitled and they don't understand the hard work we've done to put it in. So why not start teaching them to be responsible and let them learn, well, how do we get here? What do we need to do? Understand the family business. If they're going to get married, what's the family dynamics around that? Do you want to keep our wealth in-house? Are we going to be happy for our wealth to be spreading sideways generationally through marriage, or are we going to create further wealth because of marriage? all these things are actually very important discussions, not just because they look nice or he sounds good or looks good, blah, 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 blah. But marriage just has a practicality to it as well, especially if you're in business, etc.
Mhm.
So these are important topics to talk about with your partner, spouse, parents. If it's not been talked about already, let's set that trend in motion. That's what we end on that point.
Well, thank you so much, Richard.
No, thank you.
That is the end of our podcast.
Yeah, so really enjoyed that.
Yes. Apologies for not having a podcast last week.
Yes.
But next week we will also be live.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's a promise.
All
All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.
I'm going to speak to the.
Oh, sorry. I'm speaking too soon. See you guys later.